Social Darwinism. Bad biology, bad economics. So what is social Darwinism? It's the belief that human groups and races are subject to the same survival of the fittest laws as plants and animals and nature. There's been a long tradition of socialists and Marxists complaining that capitalism is social Darwinism and deriding capitalism based on this idea. The phrase first appeared in print in 1877 in an article by an Irish historian, Joseph Fisher, entitled The History of Landholding in Ireland. Shortly afterward, in 1879, the French anarchist journalist Émile Gautier is accredited with popularizing or independently coining the term in Europe, applying it critically, often in opposition to laissez-faire economics. But the term is most often associated with the British philosopher and sociologist Herbert Spencer, who lived from 1820 to 1903. Spencer was best known for developing and applying evolutionary theory to philosophy, psychology, and the study of society. Spencer's ethics was much more Scottish Enlightenment than Locke. He maintained that there's a natural mechanism, an innate moral sense in human beings, by which they come to arrive at certain moral intuitions. This is straightforward moral sentimentalism. It rejects the idea that you can have a rational ethics. Spencer also critiques Locke's famous formulation of property rights. That is the moral idea that if you create something, that you're the owner of it. Spencer contended that if resources are truly common to all humanity, no one has an inherent right to appropriate them through labor alone. In other words, in creating value alone, without broader consent or justification. Spencer viewed private property, not property rights, in land as ultimately justifiable only on the grounds of social convenience, not natural rights. Spencer differed from Darwin. Darwin's subject of study was with the natural world of plants and animals, while Spencer's primary concern was human society. Interestingly, Spencer was significantly influenced by Auguste Comte, who came up with the idea of altruism, which is a failed and evil idea for ethics. Spencer justified laissez-faire capitalism as consistent with his ideas of social Darwinism. Herbert Spencer's defense of capitalism was based on his ideas of social Darwinism. He particularly thought that it was survival of the fittest. Spencer argued that free market competition was essential for social progress, allowing the most capable to thrive and encouraging the evolution of society from a militant state to an industrial voluntary one. What's amazing is that Spencer's ideas are promoted by and considered profound by a number of libertarians, including Robert Nozick, which again shows that these people have no idea what capitalism is. As President Javier Milei points out, institutions of free enterprise capitalism are sustained by natural rights. That is, they're built on natural rights, and natural rights are built on property rights. The only correct definition of capitalism is the economic system that emerges when natural rights are protected by the government. Any other sort of justification is just complete nonsense. And we know that Spencer is nonsense because he rejects natural rights. He endorses and embraces the Scottish Enlightenment's idea of sentimentalism, which is anti-Locke, anti-reason, anti-freedom, and anti-capitalism. Like Spencer, Robert Nozick thinks that property rights don't exist. They're just socially useful tools. He argues that even though private appropriation that Locke talks about might initially seem to restrict access to the commons, the overall institution of private property is justified because it produces net benefits compared to the world without it. He lists a number of reasons, utilitarian reasons, why we should have private property. This is one of the things that's completely turned on its head by libertarians. It shows that they don't understand the very simple moral principle that if you create something, you own it. That's just amazing that they can't understand this basic point of ethics. This is one of the reasons why I'm very skeptical of the intellectual elite of the so-called libertarian movement. In addition, Spencer's ideas of social Darwinism are a complete misunderstanding of evolution. He was the one who coined the phrase survival of the fittest in his book Principles of Biology in 1864. But this idea was used to justify the eugenics movement. Marxists have tried to smear the right with the idea that eugenics was their idea. In fact, eugenics was heavily involved with the progressives, that is, the socialist movement in the U.S., including supporters like Theodore Roosevelt, Stanford President David Starr Jordan, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Margaret Sanger. What a surprise. Of course, it wasn't just U.S. socialists. It was socialists from all over the world supporting eugenics, including George Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells, Sidney and Beatrice Webb, founders of the London School of Economics. In the Soviet Union in the 1920s, there was a proletariat eugenics program, which was designed as a scientific means to create the new Soviet man. So the Marxist, socialist, leftists were behind eugenics the whole time. This idea of survival of the fittest, which is not actually what evolution is all about, is an attempt to say that the goal of evolution is competition, which is not actually the case. Although evolution does include a selection mechanism, the goal of evolution is to maximize life, that is, to convert the most energy into life. You do not maximize life by having one species or a member of a species take all. Survival of the fittest. Both of these would reduce the amount of energy being converted into life. By the way, every life form relies on other life forms, except the most basic ones. For instance, humans rely on numerous plants and animals. If one species takes all, as the survival of the fittest is often portrayed, then in fact that would cause their own extinction. This is the stupidity of the idea of survival of the fittest. It's not good evolution, it's not good biology. It's also not good economics for many of the same reasons. In economics, the goal of capitalism is not competition. The goal is not to have 500 firms creating Model Ts, as the idea of perfect competition would purport. It's to have 500 firms all creating unique high-value items. If everyone produces the same thing, what would the point of trade be? There wouldn't be one. Human life, and then the wealth we created as we escape the Malthusian trap, increases as we create more and more inventions that allow us to live in different climates. For instance, they allow us to exploit new resources just as different species maximize the amount of life. So do the number of different inventions. You don't want to make the same thing as your neighbor. You want to make some incredibly high-value thing for me, and I want to make some incredibly high-value thing that you want. We want competition to be allowed because we don't want to allow someone to become a lazy, rent-seeking parasite. What makes us wealthy is creation, not reproduction, and not competition. It's creating new and different inventions that improve our lives. To illustrate the stupidity of the competition argument, I think it's helpful to look at the idea of the 100-meter dash. The 100-meter dash is pure competition. In 1891, the world record was 10.8 seconds. Today, it's about 9.57 seconds, or a 13% gain, which is nothing compared to the gains we've had economically. These are the sort of gains that we could expect if, in fact, the only thing we were relying on is competition to make our lives better. The cotton gin is a perfect example. There were many attempts to separate cotton from seeds before Eli Whitney. None of them were successful. When Eli Whitney came up with the cotton gin, it was the first invention that actually was practical and that was successful in separating seeds from the cotton fibers. In fact, it resulted in at least a 40x increase, not a 40% increase, but 40 times increase in the amount of cotton that could be processed. The amount of cotton that the U.S. created and produced in just 1 decade after the cotton gin was invented was about 40 times as much. That's the difference between invention and competition. So not only are Herbert Spencer's ideas wrong, he does not understand natural rights. In fact, he rejects the whole idea of natural rights, substituting the idiocy of sentimentalism as ethics. He also is wrong on what makes capitalism great. He is one of those people, and those people who are proponents of him are the group of people who undermine capitalism, freedom, and reason. So Herbert Spencer needs to be thrown on the trash heap of history, along with all those idiots who support him. Long live freedom, damn it.